Some families are saluted so proudly that no one notices the woman quietly breaking behind the uniform. That was my life. From the outside, my marriage looked like discipline, honor, faith, and respect. I was the wife of a respected Army chaplain in a quiet military town in Tennessee. I had 3 beautiful daughters, a home inside the base community, and a husband soldiers looked up to. Every chapel service, every ceremony, every family dinner, and every gathering inside that military world, I stood beside Matthew with a calm face and a gentle smile. People saw us together and believed they were looking at the perfect Army family. They saw a man of faith in uniform, a wife who stood proudly beside him, and 3 little girls growing up under the image of duty, prayer, and service. They saw a life that looked steady. They saw a family that looked protected. They saw a marriage that looked strong. But people only saw what we allowed them to see. They saw me at the base chapel, dressed neatly, smiling softly, holding my children close, while Matthew stood in front of soldiers and their families. They heard him speak with confidence about courage, sacrifice, forgiveness, and faith. They watched him comfort young soldiers before deployment, guide frightened families, and stand beside commanders during difficult moments. Because he wore the uniform with respect, people believed our home must be filled with the same peace he spoke about in public. They believed a man who could calm soldiers after battle must surely bring peace into his own home. They believed a man who prayed over families must surely protect his own. I wish that had been true. Behind the closed doors of our military house, I was not the woman people thought I was. I was tired in a way sleep could not fix. I was afraid in a way I could not explain. I was confused by feelings I had buried for so long that I no longer knew where they began. There were nights when I stood alone in the bathroom, staring into the mirror while the base outside went quiet. The distant sound of patrol vehicles, training sirens, and boots on pavement reminded me that I lived in a place built around strength. But inside my own home, I felt weaker every day. My face was still mine, but my eyes had changed. They looked quiet, empty, and worn down by things I never said out loud. For the first few days, everything stayed quiet. Too quiet. I woke early, went to base, answered emails, reviewed case files, and tried to act normal. The Army can make the world look ordered even when your heart is falling apart. Soldiers crossed the yard. Officers moved between buildings. The flag rose every morning. But inside me, something felt wrong, like the air before a storm. Then the messages started. At first, they were soft. Daniel said he missed me, could not sleep, and was sorry for everything. He wrote long paragraphs about how I was the only person who had ever understood him. More than once, I almost answered, but every time my thumb moved toward the keyboard, I remembered his face on that final night, so I did not reply. After that, the messages changed. Sadness turned into anger. He said I had embarrassed him, used him, and thought my position in the legal office made me untouchable. One message said, "Everyone will know who you really are." Another said, "You will not get to walk away clean." My stomach tightened every time my phone lit up. I blocked his number, but he used new numbers, new accounts, and names I did not recognize. It felt like he was reaching through every wall I tried to build. One rainy morning, I found a folded note under the windshield wiper of my car. The paper was damp. At first, I thought it was a parking notice. Then I opened it and saw one sentence: "You still belong to the story I choose to tell." I stood there in the rain while soldiers walked past laughing. Nobody knew my whole body had gone cold. That evening, I told Mara everything. I showed her the messages, the note, and told her what Daniel had said after the breakup. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and held my hand. "Elena," she said, "this is not heartbreak. This is control." Hearing someone else say it made the truth land harder. The next morning, I reported it. I went to my commanding officer with printed screenshots, the note, dates, times, and details. As a legal officer, I knew documentation mattered. Memory could be questioned, but evidence had its own voice. My commander listened carefully, yet I felt the weight of the system around me. Daniel was respected. Daniel had friends. Daniel had a clean public image, and I was the woman who had ended the relationship. Some people believed me right away. Others were polite but distant. A few acted as if I was dragging personal drama into a professional space. I could feel their doubt in the pauses, the shifted eyes, and the careful words. One officer said, "Breakups can be emotional," as if that explained notes on cars, hidden accounts, and threats sent at midnight. I swallowed my anger and stayed calm. Then came the photo that changed my fear into something deeper. It was just after midnight when my phone lit up. The message came from an unknown number. It was a photo of my apartment door. My exact door. My welcome mat. The small scratch near the handle. The hallway light above it. No words, just the picture. I stared at it, unable to breathe properly. My curtains were closed. My room was dark. Suddenly, my own home no longer felt like mine. Before that morning, I spent years trying to survive in little ways that no one noticed. I learned how to listen to footsteps in the hallway. I learned how to read a room before entering it. I learned how to feel tension before anyone said a word. I learned how to make myself smaller when the air in the house felt heavy. I learned how to swallow my own feelings because speaking them felt too dangerous, too shameful, or too useless. In a military home, people talk often about discipline. They talk about order, control, loyalty, and sacrifice. But no one tells you what happens when those words become a prison. No one tells you what happens when being loyal means losing your voice. No one tells you what happens when everyone expects strength, but inside you are quietly falling apart. People think fear always looks loud. They imagine tears, shaking hands, running, screaming, or begging for help. But fear can look very quiet. Sometimes fear looks like a woman folding uniforms while her mind is racing. Sometimes fear looks like a mother packing school lunches while trying not to cry. Sometimes fear looks like sitting in the front row of a military chapel while everyone believes your life is blessed. Sometimes fear looks like fixing your daughter's hair, kissing their foreheads, and telling them everything is okay when nothing inside you feels okay at all. I did not always have the words for what I was feeling. I only knew I felt trapped inside the version of my life everyone admired. If I spoke, I feared I would destroy the family image. If I stayed quiet, I felt like I was destroying myself. So I kept choosing silence. That silence became part of my daily routine. It was there when I woke up. It was there when I cleaned the kitchen. It was there when I drove through the base gates. It was there when I smiled at other wives in the commissary. It was there when I sat in the chapel and listened to words about peace while my own heart felt like a battlefield. There were problems in our marriage that people later spoke about in court. There were claims of emotional pain, marital problems, and private struggles that the public had never seen. Money also became a dark cloud over us. Bills, accounts, pressure, and questions built around me until I felt like I could barely breathe. In a military community, people often assume structure means safety. They think paychecks, housing, uniforms, and routines make life stable. But pressure can grow even inside a life that looks organized. It can hide under paperwork. It can hide in quiet arguments. It can hide in the look someone gives you across the room. It can hide in the fear of asking one more question. But little by little, something inside me began to shift. The pain did not disappear, but I started to understand that pretending was not peace. I started to feel the truth rising inside me, even if I was still too afraid to speak it. I started to realize that the woman everyone saw was not the woman I truly was. The woman they saw was a performance. The real me was tired, scared, and desperate for someone to notice. The real me wanted to stop standing at attention inside a life that was crushing me. The real me wanted to breathe without fear. The real me wanted my daughters to know a home that felt safe, not just a home that looked respectable. But no one noticed enough. Or maybe I did not let them. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had spoken sooner. If I had told one person everything. If I had gone to someone outside the base. If I had asked for help before my heart became a closed room. If I had walked away before that morning. These questions follow me because they have no answers. They are doors that only open into regret. I can stand in front of those doors for the rest of my life, but they will never take me back to the moment before everything broke. Then came March 22nd, 2006. It began like an ordinary day, and that is what makes it so frightening to remember. The worst days of our lives often begin quietly. The sun rises, the base wakes, soldiers report for duty, children get ready for school, families prepare breakfast, trucks move past the housing rows, flags lift in the morning air. The world outside continues like nothing is coming. But inside, something is already breaking. That morning did not arrive with a warning. It did not announce itself as the day that would divide my life into before and after. It came like any other morning, and that is what makes it impossible to forget. The tension felt unbearable. I was carrying years of silence, years of fear, years of confusion, and years of pain I did not know how to release. I felt like I had reached the edge of myself. I was not thinking like the woman people knew from the chapel. I was not thinking like the wife who smiled beside an army chaplain. I was trapped inside a storm I had kept hidden for too long. There are moments when a person's mind becomes too crowded with pain. Everything that was buried starts moving at once. Every quiet humiliation, every fear, every unanswered question, every night spent awake, every fake smile, every swallowed word, all of it rises together. That morning, I was not standing inside peace. I was standing inside years of silence, finally breaking open. Then, everything changed. One terrible moment destroyed the life we had. Matthew was gone. There are no words that can make that moment clean. There is no way to tell it that makes it simple. It was not victory. It was not freedom. It was not the kind of revenge people imagine in stories. It was tragedy. It was shock. It was the breaking of a family in a way no family should ever break. In stories, revenge sometimes looks sharp and powerful. It looks like justice. It looks like someone finally taking control. But real life is not like that. Real life leaves bloodless silence in a room. Real life leaves children without answers. Real life leaves a woman standing in the ruins of everything she thought she was protecting. Afterward, I moved through the world like I was not fully inside my own body. Shock makes everything feel unreal. Sounds become distant. Time feels strange. Your mind tries to protect you by covering everything in fog. I knew something terrible had happened, but I could not hold the full truth of it all at once. I took my daughters and left. People later questioned that. They asked why I drove away. They asked what I was thinking. They looked at that choice and tried to turn it into proof of who I was. But in that moment, I was not planning a story. I was not thinking clearly. I was a mother in shock, holding on to the only part of my life that still felt real. My girls. I wanted them near me. I wanted one more moment with them before the world came crashing down. I wanted to protect them from a truth that was already chasing us. I wanted to believe, even for a few minutes, that I could keep them inside the small circle of my arms and stop the world from reaching them. But the truth always catches up. It moves faster than fear. It moves faster than denial. It moves faster than a mother trying to outrun the worst moment of her life. When the police found me, I was no longer the quiet army chaplain's wife. I was a suspect. I was a headline waiting to happen. I was the woman whose marriage had turned into a national story. People who had never met me began speaking about me like they knew my heart. Reporters came. Cameras came. Opinions came. And suddenly, the home I had tried so hard to keep private was open for the whole world to examine. The military community that once saluted my family now whispered about it. The chapel where I once sat quietly became part of the story. The base housing where I had hidden my pain became the background of every question. The life that had been praised in public was now being pulled apart in public. The courtroom became the place where the secret marriage was finally discussed in front of everyone. I sat there while strangers took my life apart piece by piece. They talked about my marriage, money, fear, choices, Matthew, my daughters, and things I had once been too ashamed to say out loud. It is a strange thing to hear your private pain spoken in a public room. It no longer belongs only to you. It becomes evidence. It becomes argument. It becomes something people measure, doubt, attack, defend, and explain. I had spent years hiding my truth because I was afraid of being judged. Now, my silence had ended, but my life was being judged anyway. The prosecution told their side. They said I had made a choice. They said there were financial problems. They said Matthew's life had been taken, and someone had to answer for it. They spoke with certainty, and every word reminded me that nothing about my pain could erase what had happened. Matthew was a father, a son, a minister, a man in uniform, and a person people loved. His loss was real. His absence was real. The grief of those who loved him was real. No courtroom could make that disappear. No explanation could undo it. No pain from my side could bring him back. But my side of the story was also real. My defense spoke about a marriage that had not been what people believed. They spoke about emotional pain and claims of abuse. They spoke about fear, pressure, and years of silence. They spoke about a woman who felt trapped behind a perfect image, a woman who had been breaking quietly while the world praised her marriage. A woman living behind a military family portrait that looked strong from the outside but was falling apart from within. For the first time, the difference between the public image and the private life was placed in front of everyone. The uniform, the chapel, the smiling family, the hidden fear, the quiet wife, the respected husband, the secret pain. All of it was finally being spoken aloud. As those words filled the courtroom, I felt exposed. For years, I had hidden my pain because I was afraid people would judge me. Now the whole country was judging me anyway. That is the strange cruelty of silence. It convinces you that staying quiet will protect you. But when the truth finally comes out, it comes out without your control. It comes out in courtrooms, headlines, and through strangers who do not know your voice but still speak your name. Some people choose one side and never look deeper. Some people hear only the final moment and decide that is the whole story. Others search for the years that came before it, but none of them have to live inside the memory. I do. I wanted people to understand, but I also knew some never would. Some looked at me and saw only the final moment. They did not want to hear about fear. They did not want to hear about emotional pain. They did not want to hear that a respected military marriage could hide something darker. To them, the ending was enough. Others heard my story and saw a woman who had been suffering in silence. They saw the cracks behind the image. They saw that a chapel smile did not mean a peaceful home. They saw that a wife can stand beside a respected man in uniform and still feel completely alone. But belief did not bring peace. Speaking did not undo anything. The truth came out, but it came too late. That is the part people do not understand when they talk about secrets finally being revealed. They think truth brings relief. Sometimes it does. But sometimes truth arrives after the damage is already done. Sometimes it walks into the room carrying the names of people who can never return. Sometimes it stands over broken children, broken families, and broken lives. And all it can say is, this is what was hidden. It cannot rebuild what silence helped destroy. When the verdict came, I did not feel free. I did not feel healed. I did not feel like justice had wrapped everything in a clean ending. I sat there with the weight of the courtroom around me and understood that no decision could give back what had been lost. I was convicted of voluntary manslaughter. Those words became attached to my name in a way I could never escape. Before, people knew me as the army chaplain's wife. Afterward, they knew me by the worst day of my life. No matter where my story went, that morning followed it. No matter what pain was spoken about, Matthew was still gone. No matter what people believed, my daughters still had to grow up carrying a wound they never deserved. That was the part that hurt deeper than anything. My children had lost the life they knew. They had lost their father. They had lost the simple innocence of believing their family was safe from the kind of pain that makes headlines. They had lived inside a family that people praised, and then the whole world watched it fall apart. Children should not have to carry adult secrets. They should not have to become part of a story they never chose. They should not have to lose one parent and then lose the safety of the other to a courtroom, a sentence, and a name that strangers speak with judgment. People often ask whether the truth coming out was my revenge, but I do not see it that way. Revenge sounds powerful when people tell stories. It sounds like justice, strength, and someone finally taking back control. But in real life, revenge leaves empty rooms behind. It does not heal children. It does not bring peace. It does not return what was lost. It does not turn pain into victory. It only proves that something broke so badly that no one could stop the damage from spreading. What happened in my life was not a victory over betrayal. It was a tragedy born from silence, fear, pressure, and pain that had nowhere safe to go. If there was any consequence for the secrets hidden inside my marriage, it was that the perfect image finally broke. The life people saluted was exposed as something more complicated, more painful, and more human than they wanted to believe. The world had to look at the truth that a respected military home can still hold suffering. A smiling wife can still be afraid. A marriage praised in public can still be falling apart in private. A uniform can earn respect outside the home, while the person standing beside it quietly disappears inside the home. But even that truth came at a cost too high to celebrate. I learned that pain needs a voice before it becomes a storm. I learned that silence is not strength when it is slowly destroying you. I learned that protecting an image can sometimes destroy the people living behind it. I learned that fear should never be carried alone until it turns into something no one can control. In the army, people are taught to report danger, to follow signals, to call for backup, and to never ignore a threat. But inside my own life, I ignored every warning sign because I believed silence was safer than truth. I thought endurance was the same as strength. I thought staying was the same as loyalty. I thought hiding pain was the same as protecting my family. For years, I thought I was saving my family by staying quiet. I thought I was keeping peace. I thought I was doing what a good wife and mother should do. I thought strength meant standing still, smiling softly, and never letting anyone see the battle inside me. But now, when I look back, I see a woman who needed help long before the world knew her name. I see a woman who was too afraid to tell the truth because the truth would disappoint everyone who believed in the picture. I see a woman standing in a military chapel, smiling beside her husband, while her heart was slowly breaking. And I wish I could speak to that woman now. I would tell her that being silent is not the same as being loyal. I would tell her that pain does not become honorable just because you hide it. I would tell her that asking for help is not shameful. I would tell her that her daughters needed a safe mother more than they needed a perfect-looking family. I would tell her to speak before the house became a prison. I would tell her to leave before fear became louder than reason. I would tell her that no uniform, no title, no public respect, and no perfect family image is worth losing yourself. But life does not let us return to the beginning. All I have now is the lesson. The marriage everyone praised hid a secret too big to ignore, and by the time the world finally saw it, everything was already shattered. That is why I tell this story not as a woman asking for pity, and not as a woman claiming victory. I tell it as a warning. Do not trust every perfect picture. Do not assume a quiet woman is a happy woman. Do not believe that a respected home is always a peaceful home. Do not think a family standing proudly in front of a flag is always safe behind closed doors. And if you are the one hiding pain behind a smile, I hope you hear me before it is too late. Speak. Ask for help. Tell someone the truth while there is still time to choose a different ending, because I learned in the hardest way possible that secrets do not stay buried forever. One day, they rise. One day, they speak. And sometimes, when they finally come out, they leave behind a silence even heavier than the one that came before.